Yo, what is up guys? Welcome back to a new video. If you're new around here and you're into Pokemon cards, trading cards, hobby cards, sports cards, whatever, make sure you drop a subscription on the channel. It's free and I'll help you guys to up your collecting game as much as I possibly can. You can follow me on my journey as I build my collection up and hopefully turn it into something that is really, really special. Something that I'm just getting my sort of into now, albeit that I've always bought cards and whatever in this space, is grading my own cards. Those of you that don't know, basically grading cards, essentially you send them off to certain grading companies. There are the best ones out there, the better ones than others. And basically they'll grade your card from a scale of 1 to 10, obviously 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. And basically it's a way to increase the value of your card, it's a way to protect your card. It's a way to show your card off because it's in a really cool slab then basically. Really, really cool. I actually got one. I'll just show you. It's a PSA one. It's a PSA 10 Rayquaza from Blue Sky Stream. But yeah, basically you can grade your cards. But what I've started to get into a little bit is picking up cards for grading to essentially make profit on them in the long term. There's quite a few people that do this, and anyone can do it, really. Anyone can do it. You do need an eye for the sort of what cards are likely to get a high grade, like a 10. So ideally what you want is a 10. But we're going to look at some cards today that when you buy their ungraded version, how cheap they are. We're going to look at how cheap they are and how much they can increase in value. Some of the best cards from Scarlet and Violet era to get value at if you can get them in a PSA 10. So we're going to look at quite a few cards. I'm going to show you guys how you can find the cards yourself as well. Loads of cards are available to you guys to work with. I'll be right back. Alright, so we are on a website called TCG Player. A lot of people that are involved in the hobby will know TCG Player. Some of you may, some of you may not. Basically, it's more of an American website, but what it does is give you sort of the market price of certain cards. So any set you want to look up, what I do is just type in Paradox Rift card price or card list into Google and it'll bring up TCG Player. What you're looking to do is just scour through this and look for cards basically, my opinion, at least $3 or $4 upwards. But you just want to find cards essentially that are of value. You don't want these. We're not interested in these guys that are like 10 cents and whatnot. We're interested in cards that have demands. The most important thing. So someone that we're going to look at straight away is Altaria EX. This is the special illustration rare Altaria from the set. It'll bring the card up for you, and it will give you its sort of rough market price for you, so you can see its graph and what it's done. I don't use TCG Player to work my prices out. What I do is I go to price charting. I really like it as a website. It basically will give you what this card sells for in different grades, okay? So ungraded, it gives you a rough estimate of $31. Now, bear in mind something. You might be American watching this, great. If you're from the UK, the price here, it does vary from America. So it's why about doing your research is important. But an ungraded version of Altaria goes for $31, give or take, closer to 32 actually. One in a grade 8, actually you drop value, it loses about $15 of value. Grade 9, what tends to happen with grade 9 cards these days is they tend to be basically raw price, maybe slightly more. On vintage stuff, that's different. On the real vintage stuff, grade 9's worth a lot more usually. But on modern stuff, most people see a grade 9 as just meh. What you're looking for is a PSA 10. Now, there are 3 major grading companies that you can work with. The one that I like the most is PSA. You've got Beckett as well. I just prefer PSA by a mile. All my cards are PSA. It's the most popular. Now you can see Altaria is $32, just short of ungraded. Now actually I just looked in the UK and there are some sales that have gone cheaper than that. I mean you can see some there, $26, $24. Now grading cards cost money. So shout out the Sub Center, so I'm going to shout out in this video. They are a middleman between the UK and PSA in America. PSA are based in America. Basically, it costs you money to grade per card. So we look at the cost of, basically, let's go with value or post-1980 as well. You probably look at $17.50 is probably the right price. It costs you about that to grade a card that has a final graded value of $500 or less. So we look at the Altaria. Again, final graded value is $500 or less. Simple as that. Now, I see these Altarias come up for sale all the time on eBay. I see them come up for sale all the time on Facebook in multiple different places. They're easy enough to get. They're not that sort of rare or anything like that. But they're a demanded card because people love Altaria as a Pokemon. Now, you need to make sure that you've got your eggs in a row if you want to buy these sort of cards. So when you're coming to look at these cards and thinking about buying them, you want to make sure they're centered well, okay? If you want to check out the requirements for a PSA 10, check PSA's website out. It'll give you more detail than I ever could. But it's telling me, I think it's 60-40 on the front and 75-25 on the back. And by that, the sides and the tops need to be within 60-40 as a split. So one side can be slightly bigger than the other side, but not more than 60-40. The surfaces need to be clean, no scratches on them ideally. The corners need to be nice and fresh as well. It's really, really important. The corners are looked at. But they'll give you all of the requirements that you need. But if you look at Altaria, £32, again, a PSA 10, not bad at all. Most important thing to do is make sure that they are selling around that price, because you don't want to buy cards and they're not going to sell. It's going to be very, very difficult to get a sale on them. But as you can see, Altaria is selling for that. Again, I think it's the same one that's sold twice, which is a bit weird, but unless it's different. No, it's not, it's different certs. But you can tell it's the same one because of certification number. But Altaria there, for example, is selling. So if you wanted to, you could go onto Facebook, you go onto eBay, have a look for them. We have a little look at Altaria EX on eBay. Altaria EX 253. We're interested the most in them. You can see them selling here. So that one sentiment looks a little bit iffy to me. That was not terrible. Not shocking, yeah. Little bit right heavy, I'd say. But you can go onto eBay and you can look the cards up and you can look for scratches, you can look for damage, you can ask the seller. Now, don't be that person that says to the seller, is this card perfect? Like, will it get me a 10? Because you're going to use that as a stick to beat them with. If it doesn't get a 10, there are risks involved in things like this. What I would say is if you can get it cheap enough, if there's an Altaria there and it's $30 and you can get it for $25 on the UK, if it's 25 quid, you can get it for 20 quid. Limit your risk because most people will accept offers on them. But that's one example of a card. Let's look at some more. Guard Chomp. Ungraded, $24, just short of $25. PSA 10, $94. So if you add on the grading fee, you can basically double up on a PSA 10. A grade 9 is not worth much at all compared over it, and a grade 9.5 isn't really worth much more. Beckett does the sort of half grades that most people care about anyway. So again, not masses of value there. So again, you're basically losing out on the grading fee if you do it. I will say something though, and if you submit cards enough times that are clean enough to PSA, it will eventually get a PSA 10. It's just the way that PSA are, it will eventually get a PSA 10. It's just how things are. One person will say, no, not a chance, it's not that. And then the next person will look at it and go, oh, definitely a 10. So just bear that in mind. Routes. Curlier, God of War. These guys from Scarlet and Violet base. Routes, mental, the difference on him. $12.25, $12.25. A PSA 10 for Routes goes for $210. Now, I did have a look. Probably over-egging it in terms of what it actually sells for. There's one for $87 there. There are higher sales elsewhere, like they have sold at that price. I take that with a pinch of salt. Routes is a relatively popular Pokemon, but I think you'd be holding on to it for a while. No matter what happens, if you get a Routes at $12.25 and you get a PSA 10 once you've graded it, you end up spending about $30 all in on a Routes, and you can get, even if you get up to, I don't know, $100, you're laughing. It's a really, really good return. But the whole family, Routes, Curlier, God of War, they're all very, very decent cards. Again, Curlier, $11 pretty much. Get $133 in the PSA 10. God of War, $25, $110 in the PSA 10. And again, if you're wondering why the difference, bear in mind, God of War is technically the better / rarer card. The reason for this is just that people don't tend to grade things like Routes as commonly as they would the God of War. So the population of cards that are PSA 10 is much lower. There's far less PSA 10 cards out there. But yeah, Routes, Curlier, God of War. I've seen a full sequence one on eBay. I think it went for $250. So sequential, which is really nice. Again, I think that actually went for a little less. Looking at other sets, Paldea Evolved, Tyranitar, $27.69 for a raw Tyranitar full art. Art rare even. But it's PSA 10, $272. Absolutely ridiculous gap between raw and PSA 10. This one as well, even in a grade 9, a grade 9.5, it's still got decent value. You're not really losing too much at those sort of points. Obviously, if you go in PSA, you won't get a 9.5. They don't do 0.5s. Actually, I said they don't do 0.5s. I have seen 0.5s on PSA before from random ones. I saw a random video recently and someone got a 0.5 on it. I think it was a low grade though, so I don't know if they do it at the higher end. But yeah, 9.5, 10, 9.5 usually is going to be Beckett. But really decent gap on that. Like, if you can buy a few of them, send a few of them off. If one hits a 10, you've done really, really well for yourself. So you can't complain at all. Magikarp is the big one. This card is known for having a massive, massive issue with the printing. One side, the left side, is much thinner than the right side. It's really well known for that. So an ungraded one, again, $110 at the moment, but a PSA 10 is going for over $600 at the moment, which is absolutely ridiculous. But it is known for being a very hard card to get a PSA 10 in. There's a lot that can go wrong on the card, marks on the actual card itself. So Magikarp wouldn't be one that I'd dive into if you're thinking about starting getting into grading cards. But either way, still very, very good. Huge gap. And then Eevee from Twilight Masquerade. This card was actually a lot cheaper at the beginning, like really, really cheap. You can get it far lower than $60 there. We can see it there in May, $40. You're talking 50% rise since then. Shot up, dipped down a little bit recently, but again, ungraded $60 and the PSA 10, $207. If you can get the PSA 10s, that's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. What I would say to you guys is if you want to start getting into this side of things, what I basically did was just go through Sword and Shield era and Scarlet and Violet era sets. So just found out all the sets, looked through and saw the cards and saw what the gaps were in those cards. The reason why I think Scarlet and Violet is a decent place to start, there is a demand for these cards at the moment because their impact, people are building their collections. So I think it's not a bad place to start. Theoretically, cards go up in value the older they get. That's generally what tends to happen. What we've seen recently with Sword and Shield, the sets from before Scarlet and Violet, they all boomed and went crazy, but since then they've dipped off quite heavily in certain places. Some cards like Moonblue are always going to be ridiculously sought after, but just bear that in mind. Again, the market can be volatile. Also bear in mind that certain cards that have got value, especially in the PSA 10, they've got such a strong value because they're such a new card. There aren't many PSA 10s out there. Once people start sending them off and once we start getting submissions back, it does tend to dilute the market a little bit because you've got more choice. The population increases. It just offsets it a little bit. But it's something you guys can get into if you're into Pokemon. If you're looking to get started in collecting it and making some money to basically send yourself on the way. Now, don't just dive into this if you don't know anything at all about Pokemon. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And if you're just brand new to collecting, just focus on enjoying the hobby. I like to think that I'm at the stage now where I've started to learn what cards could get a 10. I've started to learn what cards, when I look at a card in a case, like why that card got a 9, why that card got a 10, why that card got an 8. I started to get to that point. I worked really hard to learn that part of the market. And so for now, I'm going to start looking at grading my cards, essentially. Getting more of them, picking those up on maths, getting them graded and seeing what we could do with them. Eventually, I probably want to be able to vend and stuff like that, but that's a long way down the line at the moment. I'm just enjoying building the collection up. The other part of this as well is if you've got cards yourself that you love and you want to get them graded, again, let's say you like this Eevee card, take time, look for one that could possibly get a PSA 10. Not everyone needs to grade their cards, but if you want to grade it to keep it safe, to increase its value, then when you go and buy that Eevee, look for one with good centering, good corners, good surfacing, all that sort of stuff. Just be mindful of that when you buy a card, because should you decide to come and grade it at PSA 10, well, that could be great for you, because you could buy that Eevee, grade it to a PSA 10, hold on to it, enjoy it, and then if you think, actually, there's a different card that I want to buy now, you could always sell that Eevee, make a bit of money out of it, and then go and buy one of the cards you want, have some money left over to buy into other cards that you want. That's the way that I do it. I don't trade with cards like this to make money from my bank account. I trade to make money so that I can buy cards that I want for my collection. That's the whole aim of how I do things. It's no different than what I was doing before with FIFA when I was trading on the game. Now I'm just trading with sort of tangible cards in real life. But there's just a few of the cards for you. Look at all the Scarlet and Violet sets, I'd say, to make your way through them. Paradox Rift, Scarlet and Violet base, Paldea Evolved, Obsidian Flames. The Obsidian Flames Major hit Charizard. Again, that's a very, very, very sought after card in the PSA 10. You've got all the cards, all the holiday sets, 151, Paldean Fates, Shrouded Fable now, for example. So look for the gaps, look for big gaps. It's better if you go for the sets that are older in the whole sort of run, rather than going for like a Shrouded Fable, like I just said, because they've settled then. The price is less volatile. People have done them after sets, people know what they're looking for, and then moving on to the new sets. new sets, the price rises and price drops can be really, really volatile. They can climb a lot, they can drop a lot. So just bear that in mind when it comes to buying them. But they are some awesome cards you can grade to make yourself a decent amount of profit. If you're new around here, make sure you subscribe down below. If you can, drop a like and drop a comment. It makes a massive difference. I do try and comment back to every person on these videos. But for now, I'm out. Peace out. Speak to you soon.